Dare to uncover the spine-chilling secrets of Nottoway Plantation's haunted carriage house. We faced a vengeful ghost and a shocking history that'll keep you up at night. Don't miss the most terrifying adventure we've ever shared. Smash that like button, drop your scariest ghost story in the comments, and subscribe to Lull now because you won't believe what's coming next. Cassie adjusted the microphone clipped to her jacket, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement. She sat in the passenger seat of a dusty SUV parked outside a small diner in White Castle, Louisiana. The air smelled of fried onions and coffee, but her mind was elsewhere, fixed on the looming adventure ahead. "All right, you guys," she said, her voice bright but edged with nerves, as if speaking directly to thousands of listeners. "You've been flooding our comments begging us to visit Nottoway Plantation, the biggest antebellum mansion in the South. And tonight, we're answering your call. But here's the thing, we're not just chasing any ghost story. We're going straight to the heart of the creepiest spot on this property, the carriage house." Next to her, Mike, her best friend since middle school, leaned back in the driver's seat, his baseball cap tilted slightly off-center. At 30, he had the easy charm of someone who'd spent years making spooky videos for their YouTube channel, Paranormal Pulse. "You all know why we're here," he said, his tone playful but serious. Nottoway's got 64 rooms, 200 windows, and a history that's, well, let's just say it's heavy. Over 150 enslaved people lived and died here, working under brutal conditions. But the carriage house? That's where things get weird. Locals say a young girl's ghost, maybe named Sarah, haunts it. People hear cries, feel cold chills, and some even claim they've been whipped or scratched by something they can't see. Cassie nodded, her eyes wide. "We've got a subscriber, shout out to GhostChaser88, who commented that they visited Nottoway last summer and saw a girl in a white dress staring from the carriage house window. Creepy, right? So we're here to find out, is Sarah real? And if she is, what's her deal?" She paused, her voice softening. "If you've ever been to Nottoway or had a paranormal encounter, drop it in the comments. We're dying to hear your stories." Their channel had grown to 200,000 subscribers, mostly young adults aged 25 to 34, who loved their mix of humor, heart, and horror. This audience wasn't just here for jump scares. They craved stories that dug into America's messy past, especially places like Nottoway, where beauty and brutality were intertwined. The plantation, built in 1859 by sugar baron John Hampton Randolph, was a symbol of wealth with its sprawling 53,000-square-foot mansion and elegant column. But beneath the grandeur lay a darker truth, the suffering of enslaved men, women, and children who toiled in the sugarcane fields, their lives erased from the history books. For Cassie and Mike, ghost hunting wasn't just about thrills, it was about listening to those forgotten voices. They stepped out of the SUV, the Louisiana air thick with humidity and the faint buzz of cicadas. The diner's neon sign flickered, casting a red glow across the gravel parking lot. Inside, the place was quiet, save for a few locals nursing beers and burgers. Cassie and Mike found a booth, their backpacks stuffed with ghost hunting gear, EVP recorders, flashlights, and a notebook for jotting down any strange findings. As they ordered coffee, a young server approached, her apron slightly askew. Her name tag read, Kayla, and her eyes darted nervously toward their equipment. "You're those YouTubers, right?" Kayla asked, her voice low. "The ones who hunt ghosts? I saw your channel's logo on your van. You're not going to Nottoway's carriage house, are you?" Mike raised an eyebrow, sensing a story. "Yeah, that's the plan. Why? Got something we should know?" Kayla hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if the diner itself might be listening. "My cousin, Jamal, went there with some friends last year. They thought it'd be fun, sneaking in after dark to scare each other. But he said he heard crying, like a girl sobbing, coming from inside the carriage house walls. And when they got out, he had these weird marks on his back, red welts, like he'd been whipped. He won't go near Nottoway anymore, says whatever's in that carriage house is angry and doesn't want people poking around. Cassie's heart raced, but she kept her voice steady for their listeners. That's intense, Kayla. Thanks for sharing. If you're out there listening, leave a comment and tell us more about Jamal's story. Did he see anything else? And for everyone else, hit that like button if you think we're crazy for going in there. She flashed a nervous smile, her mind already racing with possibilities. Was the carriage house really haunted, or was it just local legend? Either way, their audience would eat it up. Mike leaned forward, his coffee untouched. Okay, let's talk about Nottoway's history for a sec. This place wasn't just a fancy mansion. It was a plantation built on the backs of enslaved people, men, women, kids, forced to work in the heat, punished for the smallest mistakes. Some of their names are lost, but their stories, they're still here. Maybe in the walls, maybe in the air. And the carriage house, it's like the epicenter of all that pain. People say Sarah, the ghost, was connected to the Randolph family, maybe a daughter who died young. But why is she so mad? What happened to her? Cassie picked up the thread, her voice earnest. We're not just here for ghosts, you guys. We're here to uncover the truth about Sarah, about the people who lived and died at Nottoway, about what this place really stands for. So here's a question for you. What do you think a ghost like Sarah wants? Is she angry, sad, or something else? Drop your theories in the comments and let's see who gets closest to the truth. They finished their coffee, the diner's fluorescent lights humming softly above. Kayla's warning lingered in their minds, but so did the excitement of their subscribers' comments. Paranormal Pulse thrived on moments like this, stories that blended fear with meaning, horror with history. As they stepped outside, the night felt heavier, the stars hidden behind thick clouds. The road to Nottoway was just a few miles away, but it felt like they were driving toward another world. The plantation's gates came into view, rusted iron wrapped in vines that seemed to pulse with life. The entrance was chained shut, a clear sign that visitors weren't welcome. But Cassie and Mike weren't the type to back down. They parked the SUV, grabbed their gear, and approached the stone wall flanking the property. The vines clung to the bricks, their leaves brushing against Cassie's hands like whispered warnings. "This is it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you were standing here right now, would you climb this wall and face whatever's in the carriage house, or would you turn back? Be honest. Tell us in the comments." Mike chuckled, but there was tension in his voice. "No turning back now. Our subscribers would never let us live it down." They scaled the wall, their boots slipping slightly on the damp vines. On the other side, the plantation stretched out before them, its white columns glowing faintly under the moonlight. The air was thick, almost suffocating, as if the ground itself held its breath. They could see the main mansion in the distance, its 64 rooms silent and imposing, but their destination was closer. The carriage house, a low, crumbling structure half hidden by overgrown grass. As they approached, the carriage house seemed to watch them, its sagging roof and darkened windows like a face frozen in time. Unlike the mansion's grandeur, this building felt abandoned, its wooden walls weathered by decades of neglect. The air grew colder and Cassie shivered, pulling her jacket tighter. "This place feels wrong," she said, her words meant for both Mike and their listeners. "Like it's holding on to something it doesn't want to let go. What do you guys think? Have you ever been somewhere that just felt off?" Share your stories below because we're definitely feeling it right now. Mike pushed open the carriage house door, its hinges groaning like a cry in the night. The smell of damp wood and earth hit them, heavy and cloying. Inside, the darkness was absolute, swallowing their flashlights' beams. They stepped forward, their footsteps echoing on the warped floorboards. Somewhere in the shadows, a faint sound like a whisper stirred the air. Cassie's heart pounded, but she spoke clearly, her voice steady for their audience. "We're inside the carriage house now. Whatever's here, we're ready to meet it. Stay with us, because this is just the beginning. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to know what happens next." The whisper grew louder, almost like a sob, and the air seemed to tighten around them. They were no longer just YouTubers chasing a story. They were intruders in a place that didn't want them. What waited in the carriage house? And would they be ready for it? The door to the carriage house groaned shut behind Cassie and Mike, sealing them in a darkness so thick it felt like a weight on their chests. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of rotting wood and something older, more primal, like sorrow soaked into the very walls. Cassie's flashlight beam danced across the uneven floorboards, revealing splintered planks and rusted nails scattered like forgotten relics. Her heart thudded, but she spoke clearly, her voice steady for their listeners. "Okay, you guys, we're inside the carriage house at Nottoway Plantation. It's freezing in here and it smells like... I don't even know how to describe it. Like history itself is rotting. What do you think a place like this smells like? Drop it in the comments." Mike adjusted his backpack, the weight of their ghost-hunting gear, EVP recorders, flashlights and a small notebook, pulling at his shoulders. "This place is giving me the creeps already," he said, his tone half joking but laced with unease. "You all told us the carriage house is where the real action is, and I'm starting to believe you. If you've ever been somewhere that made your skin crawl, tell us about it below. We need some backup here." His laugh echoed faintly, swallowed by the oppressive silence of the room. They took a few cautious steps forward, their boots crunching on grit and debris. The carriage house wasn't large, maybe 30 feet long, but it felt endless in the dark. The walls were lined with warped wooden panels, some carved with faint scratches, names, dates, or maybe desperate pleas etched by hands long gone. Cassie's flashlight caught a particular carving. "Elijah, 1857. She froze, her breath catching. "Mike, look at this," she whispered, tracing the letters with her finger. "Someone carved their name here. Do you think this was one of the enslaved people who worked at Nottoway?" Mike crouched beside her, his own flashlight illuminating the wall. More names appeared, Mary, Jacob, Lila, each carved with care, as if claiming a piece of existence in a place that sought to erase them. "This is heavy," he said softly. "These were real people, you guys. They lived here, suffered here, maybe died here, and now we're standing where they stood. What would you do if you found something like this? Would you keep exploring, or would you feel like you're trespassing on their memory? Let us know in the comments." Cassie nodded, her voice earnest. "We're not just here for ghosts. We're here to honor the people whose stories were buried with this plantation. Nottoway was built on their labor, their pain. Over 150 enslaved men, women and children worked these fields, lived in shacks, faced cruelty we can't even imagine. And the carriage house. It wasn't just for storing carriages. Some say it was a place of punishment, where people were whipped, locked away, or worse." She paused, her words hanging in the air. "If you think their spirits might still be here trying to speak, what would you say to them? Drop your thoughts below. We're listening." The air grew colder, a sharp chill that made Mike pull his jacket tighter. He turned on the EVP recorder, its red light blinking in the gloom. "All right, let's see if anyone's here with us," he said, his voice steady but his eyes darting to the shadows. "If there's a spirit in the carriage house, we mean you no harm. We're here to hear your story. Can you give us a sign?" The recorder hummed softly, capturing only silence at first. But then a faint sound, like a sigh, drifted through the air, so soft it could have been their imagination. Cassie's eyes widened. Did you hear that? She whispered, gripping Mike's arm. It sounded like breathing, or maybe a voice. Guys, if you've ever used an EVP and caught something creepy, tell us about it in the comments. We're freaking out a little here. She forced a laugh, but the tension in her voice was real. The carriage house felt alive, its walls pulsing with unseen eyes. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle in the dark, seemed to carry a message. They moved deeper into the room, their flashlights sweeping across a pile of old crates in the corner. Dust motes danced in the beams, giving the air a ghostly shimmer. Cassie spotted something glinting among the debris, a small tarnished silver locket half buried under a broken board. She knelt, her fingers brushing the cold metal. "Mike, check this out," she said, holding it up. The locket was engraved with a delicate S, its surface worn but still beautiful. "Do you think this belonged to Sarah, the girl everyone says haunts this place?"
Mike leaned closer, his breath visible in the chilly air. "Maybe. If Sarah was part of the Randolph family, she could have owned something like this. But why would it be here, in the carriage house? This wasn't a place for fancy jewelry." He paused, his voice dropping. "Unless something bad happened to her here. You guys, what do you think this locket means? Is it a clue to Sarah's story or just a random find? Drop your theories in the comments. We need your help to figure this out." Cassie opened the locket, her fingers trembling. Inside was a tiny, faded photograph of a young girl, no older than 16, with dark curls and a solemn expression. The image was blurry, but her eyes seemed to stare right through them. "This has to be her," Cassie whispered. "Sarah. She looks sad, like she's carrying something heavy." The air around them grew colder still, and the EVP recorder beeped, its battery draining inexplicably. A soft thud echoed from the far end of the carriage house, like something falling or someone moving. Mike spun around, his flashlight darting across the walls. "What was that?" he said, his voice tight. "Okay, you guys, we just heard something, and our EVP is acting weird. If you've ever had equipment fail in a haunted place, tell us about it below. Is this a sign, or are we just paranoid?" He tried to laugh, but it came out strained. The carriage house was no longer just a creepy building. It felt like a living thing, watching, waiting, deciding whether to let them stay. Cassie clutched the locket, her heart pounding. "Let's keep going," she said, though her voice wavered. "If Sarah's here, maybe she wants us to find something." They moved toward the sound, their footsteps careful but deliberate. The carriage house was a maze of shadows, with narrow alcoves and sagging beams that seemed ready to collapse. In one corner, they found a small trapdoor in the floor, its edges caked with dirt. Mike knelt, tugging at the rusted handle. "This could be where they kept, I don't know, supplies? Or maybe something worse." The trapdoor creaked open, revealing a shallow space filled with cobwebs and a single wooden box. Cassie's flashlight illuminated its surface, revealing more carvings, names, dates, and a crude drawing of a whip. "Oh my God," she whispered. "This isn't just a storage space. This feels like a prison, like they locked people down here." Her voice broke, and she turned to their listeners. "You guys, this is why we do this, to uncover stories like this. If you think the spirits of Nottoway's enslaved people are still here, what do you think they'd want us to know? Share your thoughts in the comments." Mike lifted the box, its wood splintered and fragile. Inside were scraps of paper, yellowed with age, and a small leather-bound journal. He opened it, his hands shaking slightly. The pages were filled with tight, hurried handwriting, lists of names, dates, and punishments. One entry stood out. Elijah, 1857, whipped for disobedience, carriage house. Another read, Lila, 1859, confined for theft, died. Mike's voice was barely audible as he read aloud. "This is a record of what happened here. They documented it like it was nothing, just business." Cassie's eyes filled with tears, but she kept her composure for their audience. "These were people, you guys. Not property, not numbers. People with hopes, fears, families. And this carriage house, it wasn't just a place for carriages. It was a place of pain. Maybe that's why Sarah's ghost is here. Maybe she saw something, or did something, or I don't know. She paused, her voice softening. What do you think happened to Sarah? Was she a victim, or part of the cruelty? Let's hear your theories below. The air grew heavier, as if the names in the journal were listening. The EVP recorder beeped again, its screen flickering. Then, a faint whisper came through, not from the device, but from the air itself. Leave, it said, so soft it could have been the wind. But there was no wind in the carriage house. Cassie and Mike froze, their eyes meeting in the dim light. Did you hear that? Mike whispered, his voice barely audible. That was a voice, a real voice. Cassie nodded, her grip tightening on the locket. Okay, you guys, we just heard something, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm scared. If you've ever heard a ghost speak, tell us about it in the comments. We need to know we're not alone in this. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The carriage house felt smaller now, the walls closing in. Every shadow seemed to move, every creak a warning. They were no longer just explorers. They were intruders in a place that held its secrets tightly.
Mike set the journal down, his hands unsteady. We need to keep going, he said, though his voice betrayed his fear. If Sarah's here, or anyone else, they might want us to find something else, something they couldn't say when they were alive. He shone his flashlight deeper into the carriage house, where a narrow staircase led to a loft above. The steps were warped, some missing entirely, but they beckoned like a challenge. Cassie hesitated, the locket still in her hand. This feels personal now, she said, her voice raw. Like we're not just hunting ghosts, we're uncovering a story that's been buried for over a century. You guys, what would you do right now? Would you climb those stairs or would you get out while you still can? Drop your vote in the comments because we're about to make a choice. The whisper came again, louder this time. Leave. And with it, a faint sob, like a girl crying in the distance. The carriage house was no longer just a building. It was a tomb, a witness, a keeper of pain. And Cassie and Mike were about to step deeper into its heart. The air in the carriage house turned icy, as if the very walls of Nottoway Plantation were exhaling a frozen breath. Cassie clutched the tarnished silver locket, its engraved S pressing into her palm, while the faint sob they'd heard moments ago lingered in her ears. The narrow staircase to the loft loomed before them, its warped steps disappearing into a darkness that seemed to pulse with secrets. Mike's flashlight flickered, casting erratic shadows that danced like specters on the splintered walls. Okay, you guys, Cassie said, her voice trembling, but resolute for their listeners. We just heard a voice say leave, and now there's this crying sound. I'm not gonna lie, we're scared. Have you ever been in a place that felt this alive? Drop your stories in the comments because we need to know we're not alone right now. Mike gripped the EVP recorder, its screen glitching with static, as if something unseen was interfering. That sob, he whispered, his eyes fixed on the staircase. It's coming from up there. I don't know if it's Sarah or something else, but we can't stop now. Our subscribers would kill us if we bailed. He forced a chuckle, but the tension in his voice betrayed him. What would you do, you guys? Climb those creepy stairs or get the heck out? Tell us in the comments, because we're about to make a choice that might haunt us forever. Cassie took a deep breath, the locket heavy in her hand. The journal they'd found, filled with names of enslaved people and their punishments, still weighed on her mind, its pages a grim reminder of Nottoway's past. This isn't just about ghosts, she said, her voice soft but urgent. Whoever's here, they're tied to this place's history. The carriage house wasn't just for storing carriages, it was a place of suffering. Maybe Sarah saw something, or maybe she was part of it. We need to know If you think the spirits here have a message, what do you think it is? Share your thoughts below. They started up the staircase, each step creaking under their weight, the sound echoing like a warning. The air grew colder with every step, and Cassie's breath formed faint clouds in the dim light. The loft above was a small, cramped space, its ceiling sagging with age and neglect. Cobwebs draped across the corners, and a single, broken window let in a sliver of moonlight, illuminating a pile of old crates and a dusty rocking chair that swayed slightly as if touched by an unseen hand. Mike froze, his flashlight trained on the chair. "That's not moving on its own, right?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You guys, if you've ever seen something move by itself in a haunted place, tell us about it in the comments, because this is freaking me out." Cassie stepped closer, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure their listeners could hear it. "It's just the wind," she said, trying to convince herself as much as Mike. But the air was still, the window too small to let in a breeze. She set the locket on a crate, its silver glinting in the moonlight, and turned on the EVP recorder. "If you're here, Sarah, or anyone else, we're listening," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. "We found your locket. We found the journal. We know what happened here. Can you tell us your story?" The recorder hummed, its red light flickering erratically. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a sound like a sharp intake of breath came through, followed by a low, guttural whisper. "Mind!" Cassie's skin prickled and she grabbed Mike's arm. "Did you hear that?" she hissed, her eyes wide. "It said, 'mine,' like someone's claiming something." The locket? The carriage house? You guys, what do you think that voice meant? Drop your theories in the comments because we're officially spooked. Mike shone his flashlight around the loft, its beam cutting through the darkness but revealing nothing. The rocking chair swayed again, faster now, its creaks rhythmic, almost deliberate. "Okay, that's not normal," he said, his voice shaking. "Something's here with us. I can feel it." He turned to their listeners, his tone urgent. "If you've ever felt like you're being watched in a creepy place, tell us about it below, because right now it feels like eyes are everywhere." Cassie's flashlight caught something on the far wall, a faint carving, deeper and more deliberate than the ones below. It read, "Sarah, 1860, left me." The words were jagged, as if carved in anger or desperation. Cassie's stomach twisted. "This has to be her," she whispered. "Sarah, she was here, in this loft. But what does 'left me' mean? Did someone abandon her? Or did she do something to someone else?" She paused, her voice softening. "You guys, this is getting personal. What do you think happened to Sarah? Was she a victim or something else? Let us know in the comments." The temperature plummeted, a sudden, bone-chilling cold that made their teeth chatter. The EVP recorder beeped wildly, its screen flashing, before shutting off completely. Mike fumbled with it, cursing under his breath. "The battery was full," he said, his voice tight. "This thing shouldn't be dead. You guys, if your equipment's ever failed in a haunted place, tell us how you handled it, because we're out of ideas here." Before Cassie could respond, a loud thud echoed from the crate where she'd placed the locket. The silver trinket slid to the floor, as if pushed by an unseen hand. Cassie gasped, stumbling back, and Mike grabbed her arm to steady her. "Okay, that was real," he said, his voice rising. "Something just moved that locket. We're not alone up here." He turned to their listeners, his words rushed. "If you were us right now, would you pick up that locket or leave it alone? Drop your vote in the comments because we're freaking out." Cassie's heart raced, but she couldn't tear her eyes from the locket, now lying in a pool of moonlight. Against her better judgment, she knelt and reached for it, her fingers brushing the cold metal. The moment she touched it, the air exploded with sound, a piercing scream, sharp and anguished, like a girl in unbearable pain. The rocking chair slammed to a stop, and the shadows in the loft seemed to twist, coalescing into a figure at the edge of the moonlight. There she was, Sarah. A young girl, no older than 16, stood before them, her white dress torn and stained, her dark curls falling in disarray over her pale face. Her eyes, hollow and burning with rage, locked onto Cassie's. "You took it," she hissed, her voice echoing unnaturally, as if coming from everywhere and nowhere. "It's mine!" The locket in Cassie's hand grew scalding hot, and she dropped it with a cry, her palm red and stinging. Mike stumbled back, his flashlight shaking. "Holy Sarah, is that you?" he stammered, his voice cracking. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to know your story." But Sarah's form flickered, her face contorting with fury. The air grew heavy, pressing down on them like a physical force. The carvings on the walls seemed to glow faintly, the names of the enslaved, Elijah, Lila, Jacob, pulsing as if alive. Cassie's voice trembled as she spoke to their listeners. "You guys, we're seeing her. Sarah's here and she's angry. If you've ever seen a ghost, what did you do? Tell us in the comments, because we're way out of our depth." She backed toward the staircase, her eyes never leaving Sarah's. The ghost took a step forward, her bare feet silent on the floor, but each movement sent a ripple of cold through the loft. The locket on the floor began to tremble, skittering across the wood as if pulled by invisible strings. "Give it back!" Sarah screamed, her voice a deafening wail that shook the walls. The crates in the loft rattled, and a sharp, invisible force slashed across Mike's arm, leaving a red welt that looked like a whip mark. He yelped, clutching his arm, his flashlight clattering to the floor. "What the hell was that?" he shouted, his fear raw and unfiltered. "You guys, something just hit me. It felt like a whip. If you've ever been touched by a ghost, tell us how it felt in the comments, because this is insane!" Cassie grabbed Mike's hand, pulling him toward the staircase. "We need to go," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "Sarah, we're sorry. We didn't mean to take your locket. We'll leave it here." She stepped back, but Sarah's form surged forward, her eyes blazing with a fury that felt ancient, unstoppable. The air crackled with energy, and the names carved on the walls seemed to whisper, a chorus of voices joining Sarah's scream. The staircase creaked beneath them as they stumbled down, the locket left behind in the loft. But the carriage house wasn't done with them. The door they'd entered through slammed shut with a deafening bang, trapping them inside. Cassie's flashlight flickered, then died, plunging them into near darkness. Only the faint moonlight from the broken window illuminated Sarah's figure, now standing at the base of the stairs, her dress billowing as if caught in a wind that didn't exist. "You can't leave," Sarah whispered, her voice softer now but no less terrifying. "You know too much." The welts on Mike's arm burned, and Cassie felt a sharp sting across her shoulder, as if an invisible whip had struck her too. She cried out, her voice raw with panic. "Okay, you guys," she said, her words rushed for their listeners. "We're trapped, and Sarah's not letting us go. What would you do right now? Fight, run, or try to talk to her? Drop your advice in the comments, because we're out of options." The carriage house seemed to close in around them, its walls groaning as if alive. The names of the enslaved, carved into the wood, felt like a silent plea, or a warning. Cassie and Mike were no longer just ghost hunters. They were caught in a story that had been buried for over a century, and Sarah's rage was only the beginning. The carriage house door remained sealed, its heavy wood unyielding despite Mike's frantic shoving. The air inside was thick with cold, each breath forming clouds that lingered like ghosts. Cassie's shoulder burned where an invisible force had struck her, the welt pulsing with a pain that felt alive, accusing. Sarah's spectral form hovered at the base of the staircase, her tattered white dress billowing as if caught in a storm only she could feel. Her eyes, hollow yet blazing with fury, locked on to Cassie and Mike, pinning them in place. "You know too much," she hissed, her voice a chilling echo that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. Cassie's heart pounded, but she spoke for their listeners, her voice shaking yet resolute. "You guys, we're trapped in the carriage house with Sarah's ghost, and she's not happy. If you've ever faced something this terrifying, how did you get through it? Drop your stories in the comments, because we need all the help we can get." Mike pressed his back against the door, his arm still stinging from the whip-like mark that had appeared moments ago. "Sarah, please," he said, his voice cracking with fear and desperation. "We didn't mean to upset you. We found your locket, the journal, the names on the walls. We just want to understand what happened here." But Sarah's form flickered, her face twisting into a snarl. The carvings on the walls, Elijah, Lila, Jacob, seemed to pulse, their etched lines glowing faintly in the dim moonlight filtering through the broken window. The air crackled with energy, and the floorboards groaned as if the carriage house itself were protesting their presence. Cassie clutched the journal they'd found, its pages heavy with the recorded suffering of Nottoway's enslaved people. "Okay, you guys," she said, her voice trembling, but clear for their audience. "This place is alive with something, anger, pain, maybe both. Sarah's ghost is real and she's tied to this carriage house. But why is she so mad? Is it about the locket? Or something deeper? What do you think a ghost like Sarah wants? Revenge? Peace? Drop your theories in the comments, because we're trying to figure this out before she does something worse." The temperature plummeted further, the cold biting into their skin like needles. Sarah's form surged forward, her spectral hands outstretched, fingers clawing at the air. "You took it!" she screamed, her voice a deafening wail that shook the carriage house. The locket left behind in the loft skittered across the floor below, as if drawn to her by an invisible force. Cassie stumbled back, her shoulder slamming against a wall, and another sharp sting lashed across her arm, a second welt, red and raw, forming as if by magic. She cried out, her voice raw with panic. "Mike! She's not stopping! We need to do something!" Mike's eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but the door wouldn't budge, and the windows were too small to climb through. "Sarah, we're sorry!" he shouted, his voice echoing in the confined space. "We'll leave the locket, the journal, everything. Just let us go." But Sarah's ghost only grew more vivid, her dress now stained with dark patches that looked like blood, her face contorted with a rage that felt centuries old. The air grew heavier, pressing down on them, and the names on the walls seemed to whisper, a chorus of voices rising in protest. Cassie's mind raced, the journal still clutched to her chest. The names, Elijah, Lila, Jacob, felt like more than just carvings. They were a plea, a demand to be remembered. "You guys," she said, her voice breaking as she addressed their listeners. "This isn't just about Sarah. The people who suffered here, the enslaved men and women, their names are all over this place. Maybe they're part of this too. If you think their spirits are here, what do you think they'd want us to do? Keep telling their story or leave them in peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because we're caught in something bigger than us." Just as Sarah's ghost raised her hand, a spectral whip forming in her grasp, a new presence filled the carriage house. The air shifted, the oppressive cold easing slightly, replaced by a warmth that felt almost protective. A figure emerged from the shadows, a tall man, his clothes tattered and patched, his face etched with lines of hardship, but his eyes burning with quiet strength. He stood between Cassie and Mike and Sarah's ghost, his presence commanding, unyielding. "Enough, Sarah," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of a life endured and a death defied. "These folks ain't your enemy." Sarah's ghost froze, her whip dissipating into mist. Her eyes widened, a flicker of fear replacing her rage. The carvings on the walls dimmed, their whispers falling silent. Cassie and Mike stared, their breaths shallow, as the man turned to them. "I'm Josiah," he said, his voice calm but distant, as if speaking across a great divide. "I worked this land, lived in chains, died in them too. Sarah here, she's tied to this place, same as me, but her anger's misplaced." Cassie's voice trembled as she spoke, both to Josiah and their listeners. "You guys, there's another spirit here, Josiah. He's protecting us? If you've ever heard of a ghost standing up for someone, tell us about it in the comments, because this is unreal." She gripped the journal tighter, her eyes locked on Josiah's form. "Who are you, Josiah? And why is Sarah so angry?" Josiah's gaze softened, but there was a hardness in it too, a resolve forged through suffering. "Sarah was the youngest of the Randolph family," he said, his words slow and deliberate. "She died in this carriage house, sick and alone, left by her kin when the fever took her. She was only 16, but she saw things. Things done to us, to me, to Elijah, Lila, all the folks whose names you found. She knew about the whippings, the chains, the lives taken in this very room, and she did nothing. Her guilt keeps her here, but so does her shame." Mike's arm still burned from the welt, but he found his voice. "So she's angry because she feels guilty?" he asked, his tone a mix of fear and curiosity. "Or because she was abandoned?" He turned to their listeners, his words rushed. "You guys, this is huge. Josiah's telling us Sarah's story, but it's tied to Nottoway's history. What do you think keeps a ghost like Sarah here? Guilt, anger, or something else? Drop your thoughts below, because we're trying to piece this together." Josiah nodded, his form flickering slightly in the moonlight. "Sarah's caught in her own pain," he said. "But she takes it out on anyone who comes near, like you two. Me? I stayed because I made a promise. When I was alive, I tried to protect my people, Elijah, Lila, the others. We carved our names to say we were here, to say we mattered. I died in this carriage house, whipped for helping a friend escape. But I ain't left, because someone's got to keep Sarah from hurting folks. Someone's got to keep the truth alive." Cassie's eyes filled with tears, the journal heavy in her hands. "Josiah, that's incredible," she whispered. "You're still here, protecting people, even after everything you went through." She turned to their listeners, her voice raw with emotion. "You guys, Josiah's story is breaking my heart. He was enslaved, suffered, died, and yet he's still fighting for others. If you've ever heard a story like this about someone standing up against injustice, share it in the comments. We need to hear it, and so does everyone else." Sarah's ghost flickered, her form less solid now, her eyes darting between Josiah and the locket on the floor. "They don't belong here," she whispered, her voice softer, almost pleading. "They'll tell everyone, they'll ruin it." But Josiah stepped closer, his presence like a shield. "They ain't here to ruin nothing," he said firmly. "They're here to listen. You want to be free, Sarah? Then let the truth out. Let these folks tell what happened here." The carriage house seemed to hold its breath, the air still but charged with possibility. The door, once sealed, creaked slightly, as if loosening its grip. Cassie and Mike exchanged a glance, their fear mingling with awe. "Okay, you guys," Mike said, his voice steadying. "Josiah's standing up to Sarah, and it's like the whole carriage house is listening. If you think truth can set a ghost free, or if you've got a story about a spirit finding peace, drop it in the comments. We're witnessing something unbelievable here." Cassie knelt, her hands shaking, as she picked up the locket, this time without burning. "Sarah," she said softly, "we're not here to hurt you. We want to tell your story, and Josiah's, and everyone else's. The world needs to know what happened at Nottoway, not just the ghost stories, but the real ones about the people who suffered here. She paused, her voice breaking. What do you guys think? Can sharing these stories make a difference? For the living or the dead? Let us know below. Sarah's form wavered, her rage giving way to something softer. Grief, perhaps, or regret. She reached out, her spectral hand brushing the locket, and for a moment her face was that of a scared young girl, not a vengeful ghost. Then, with a soft cry, she vanished, leaving only the locket and a faint warmth in the air. Josiah remained, his eyes fixed on Cassie and Mike. "You got a chance to do right," he said. "Tell the world what you found. Don't let our names fade." The door creaked open fully, moonlight spilling into the carriage house. Cassie and Mike stood frozen, the journal and locket in their hands, the weight of Josiah's words settling over them. They weren't just ghost hunters anymore. They were keepers of a story that demanded to be told. The carriage house door stood ajar, moonlight spilling across the warped floorboards like a path to freedom. Cassie and Mike remained rooted in place, their breaths shallow, the journal and locket clutched tightly in their hands. The air, once heavy with Sarah's rage, now felt lighter, as if the carriage house itself had exhaled. Josiah's spectral form stood before them, his tall frame steady, his eyes carrying a quiet strength that seemed to anchor the room. Sarah's ghost was gone, her anguished cry fading into the night, but the weight of her story, and Josiah's, lingered like a heartbeat in the walls. Cassie's voice trembled as she spoke to their listeners, her words raw with emotion. "You guys, we just faced Sarah's ghost, and Josiah, he saved us. If you've ever felt a moment that changed how you see the world, tell us about it in the comments, because right now we're not the same people who walked into this carriage house." Mike's arm still burned from the welt. Sarah's spectral whip had left, but he managed a shaky smile. "This is wild, you guys. We came here looking for a ghost story, but we found something bigger, something real. Josiah's been here, watching over this place, keeping Sarah's anger in check. And those names on the walls, Elijah, Lila, Jacob, they're not just carvings, they're people, lives, stories. What do you think it means to carry a story like this? Drop your thoughts below, because we're still processing it all." Josiah's form flickered, the moonlight catching the edges of his tattered clothes. "You've seen the truth," he said, his voice deep and resonant, carrying the weight of a century. "This place, Nottoway, it's more than a mansion. It's a graveyard of dreams, of lives taken too soon. Sarah's caught in her guilt, her shame for what her family did. Me? I stayed to protect the others, the ones who couldn't leave. But you two, you can do what we couldn't. You can tell the world." Cassie's eyes filled with tears, the journal heavy in her hands. Its pages, filled with the names and punishments of enslaved people, felt like a sacred burden. "Josiah, we will," she said, her voice breaking. "We'll tell everyone about you, about Elijah, Lila, about what happened here. The world needs to know." She turned to their listeners, her tone earnest. "You guys, this is why we do this. Not just for the scares, but to give a voice to people like Josiah. If you've ever felt called to share someone's story, whether it's history or something personal, tell us about it in the comments. Let's keep these stories alive." Mike nodded, his hand resting on the locket, which lay still on the floor. Sarah's story, Josiah's story, they're tied together, but they're so different. Sarah's trapped by her family's sins, but Josiah, he's a hero. He died fighting for his people, and he's still fighting. What do you guys think makes someone stay behind, even after death? Is it love, duty, or something else? Drop your thoughts below, because Josiah's story is blowing our minds. Josiah's gaze softened, a faint smile crossing his face. I stayed because I had to, he said. When I was alive, I helped my friend Elijah try to escape. We planned it right here in this carriage house. But they caught us. They whipped me, locked me in that trapdoor you found, left me to die. Elijah got away, but I paid the price, and I'd do it again. Because even in chains, we found ways to fight. We carved our names to say we were here, to say we mattered. You found those names. Now you carry them. Cassie's throat tightened, the weight of his words sinking in. That's incredible, Josiah, she whispered. You're a hero, not just for then, but for now. She turned to their listeners, her voice filled with conviction. You guys, Josiah's story is proof that even in the darkest times, people fought back. They resisted. If you know a story of someone who stood up against injustice, share it in the comments. Let's honor them like we're honoring Josiah. The carriage house seemed to listen, its walls no longer groaning, but quiet, as if at peace. The names carved into the wood, Elijah, Lila, Jacob, felt like a silent chorus, their presence a testament to resilience. Mike picked up the locket, its silver cool now, no longer burning. What about Sarah? He asked Josiah. Is she gone, or is she still here, trapped? Josiah's form flickered, his eyes turning to the spot where Sarah had vanished. She's still here, he said softly. Her guilt holds her, but tonight you gave her a chance to be heard. Maybe one day she'll find peace, but that's not my fight. My fight is keeping her from hurting folks, keeping the truth alive. You take that locket, that journal, and you tell the world what you found. Don't let Nottoway be just a ghost story. Make it a reckoning. Cassie nodded, tears streaming down her face. We promise, Josiah. We'll tell everyone, on our channel, in our videos, everywhere. The world will know about you, about all of you. She turned to their listeners, her voice steady despite her emotions. You guys, this is bigger than we ever expected. We came to Nottoway for a ghost hunt, but we're leaving with a mission. What would you do with a story like this? Would you share it, research it, or something else? Drop your ideas in the comments, because we're ready to take this further. Mike tucked the journal into his backpack, his hands still shaking. This place, it's changed us, he said, his voice raw. We've been ghost hunting for years, but this is different. Josiah, Sarah, the names on the walls, they're real. They're not just stories. And you guys, our subscribers, you're part of this now. If you think places like Nottoway should be remembered for their true history, not just their ghosts, let us know in the comments. Let's start a conversation. The carriage house door creaked wider, as if inviting them to leave. The moonlight outside was brighter now, the air warmer, the cicadas humming softly in the distance. Josiah's form began to fade, his eyes lingering on them with a mix of gratitude and resolve. You've done good, he said, his voice growing distant. Don't stop. Keep telling the truth. And with that, he was gone, leaving only a faint warmth in the air, like a final blessing. Cassie and Mike stepped outside, the journal and locket heavy in their hands. The plantation stretched before them, its white columns gleaming under the stars, but it no longer felt like a monument to wealth. It was a testament to survival, to the people who had endured its horrors and left their marks, literal and spiritual, behind. They walked back to the stone wall, their boots crunching on the overgrown grass, the weight of their experience settling over them like a mantle. As they climbed over the wall and reached their SUV, Cassie turned to their listeners one last time. You guys, we're out of the carriage house, but this story isn't over. We're taking Josiah's words with us, and we're going to share them on our channel, maybe even beyond. Nottoway isn't just a haunted place. It's a place of truth, of pain, of courage. If this story moved you, if it made you think, share it with someone. Drop a comment about what you'd do with a story like Josiah's, or how you'd honor the people whose names we found. And hit that subscribe button if you want to see where this journey takes us next. Mike started the car, the engine's hum a stark contrast to the silence of the carriage house. "We came here looking for ghosts," he said, his voice soft but firm. "But we found something more, heroes like Josiah, stories that need to be told. You guys, let's make a promise. Let's keep these names alive. Elijah, Lila, Jacob, Josiah. Say them with us in the comments because they deserve to be remembered." The SUV pulled away from Nottoway Plantation, its silhouette fading into the night. The journal and locket rested in Cassie's lap, a tangible link to the past they'd uncovered. They weren't just YouTubers anymore, they were storytellers, entrusted with a legacy that demanded to be shared. The carriage house, with its whispers and welts, its ghosts and truths, would stay with them forever. And as they drove into the darkness, they knew their audience, their community, would help carry that legacy forward. The SUV rumbled down the quiet Louisiana road, the silhouette of Nottoway Plantation fading into the night like a memory struggling to hold on. Cassie sat in the passenger seat, the journal and locket resting heavily in her lap, their weight more than physical. The names carved into the carriage house walls, Elijah, Lila, Jacob, Josiah, echoed in her mind, each one a heartbeat demanding to be heard. Mike's hands gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles still pale from the fear that had gripped them in the carriage house. The welts on his arm and Cassie's shoulder throbbed faintly, a reminder of Sarah's rage and the truth they'd uncovered. Cassie's voice, soft but steady, broke the silence, speaking to their listeners as if they were right there with them. "You guys, we're driving away from Nottoway, but it feels like we're carrying a piece of it with us. Have you ever left a place and felt like it changed you forever? Drop your stories in the comments because we're still reeling from this one." Mike glanced at her, his eyes reflecting the dashboard's faint glow. "This wasn't just a ghost hunt," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "We went in looking for Sarah's ghost, for some creepy footage to post on Paranormal Pulse. But what we found, Josiah, the journal, those names, it's bigger than us. It's bigger than our channel. You guys, what do you do when you stumble onto a story this heavy? Do you keep it to yourself, or do you shout it from the rooftops? Let us know in the comments because we're figuring out our next step." They drove in silence for a moment, the hum of the engine mingling with the distant chirping of crickets. Cassie opened the journal, her fingers tracing the faded handwriting. The names and punishments listed within, Elijah whipped, Lila confined, countless others erased, felt like a call to action. "Josiah told us to tell the world," she said, her voice thick with conviction, "and that's what we're going to do. We're going to upload this story, every detail, to our channel. But it's not just about the video. It's about making sure people like Josiah, Elijah, and Lila aren't forgotten. If you've ever shared a story that mattered to you, how did it feel to give it a voice? Tell us below because we're ready to make some noise." Back at their motel, a cramped room with peeling wallpaper and a flickering lamp, Cassie and Mike set up their laptops to edit the audio they'd recorded. The EVP files were spotty, filled with static, but Sarah's voice, mine, came through clear as day, chilling even in the safety of their room. The faint sob, the whisper of leave, and the thud of the locket hitting the floor sent shivers down their spines. "This is gold," Mike said, his voice a mix of awe and nerves. "Our subscribers are going to lose it when they hear this. But it's more than that, you know? It's proof that something's out there, that Josiah and Sarah are real. You guys, if you've ever caught an EVP that gave you chills, share it in the comments. We need to know we're not alone in this." Cassie nodded, her eyes fixed on the journal. "It's not just about the EVPs," she said. "It's about what they mean. Josiah stayed behind to protect people, to keep Sarah from hurting anyone else. He's a hero, not just in life, but in death. And Sarah, she's trapped. Maybe by guilt, maybe by shame. What do you think it takes for a spirit to find peace? Drop your thoughts below, because we're still wondering if Sarah's ever going to be free." as they uploaded the video titled The Truth. We found in Nottoway's carriage house, they included a detailed description. We faced a ghost, uncovered a hero, and found a story that needs to be told. Join us in honoring the names of Nottoway's forgotten. The video ended with a call to action, Cassie's voice ringing with purpose. You guys, this is more than a ghost story. It's a call to remember. Elijah, Lila, Jacob, Josiah, say their names in the comments, share this video, and let's make sure their stories live on. Hit that subscribe button if you're with us, because we're not done telling the truth. The video went live, and within hours the comments poured in. Spooky Vibes 23 wrote, I visited Nottoway last year and felt so uneasy near the carriage house. You guys are brave. History Nerd 88 added, thank you for talking about the enslaved people. Their stories matter. Others shared personal tales of paranormal encounters, theories about Sarah's guilt, and admiration for Josiah's courage. Cassie read the comments aloud, her voice breaking with gratitude. You guys are amazing, she said. Your stories, your support, it's keeping this journey alive. Keep commenting, keep sharing, because this is just the beginning. Mike leaned back, the locket resting on the motel table. We're not the same people we were yesterday, he said. Nottoway changed us. Josiah changed us. What do you guys think changes someone more? A ghost or a truth you can't unlearn? Drop your thoughts below, because we're still figuring it out. As they packed their gear, ready to head to their next adventure, the journal and locket remained with them, a promise to Josiah, to their audience, to never let the truth fade.